Hey, just a real quick heads up. This episode is gonna be kind of long. I know. We tried to cut it down as much as we possibly could, and if you would believe it, we probably cut it down in half. There is so much incredibly interesting and amazing information, and we sat down with a legend, Seth Mosley of Full Circle Music. The guy has won multiple Grammys, sold millions of records, whether it's songs he's written or produced, and we had a rare opportunity to crack him open and peek inside of his brain to hear his thoughts, as well as discuss the very history of songwriting and the songs that we love and listen to. So I encourage you, listen all the way to the end. If you have to do it in 2 or 3 sittings, I completely understand. But you're gonna wanna listen to the whole thing until the very end. We have something very special for Turned Up listeners, and it's completely exclusive. You don't want to miss it. As always, thank you so much for listening. Enjoy the show. And I'll just start this. Are you there? Hey.
I'm over here. I'm down here on the blue track. You're making me mad because you're going to be giving away the formula, essentially, that's keeping us employed.
I am.
You got an amazing face.
The costume I wear, the furry pants.
By the way,
you don't set up fake Instagram accounts and call it R&D.
The first time I won a Grammy, I didn't even know the Grammys was on TV.
Broadcasting from Nashville, Tennessee, offering a glimpse inside the music industry, shedding light on things they don't want you to know, and exposing some of the industry's biggest secrets. You're listening to the Turned Up Podcast, presented by Real Sound Productions. Here are your hosts, Jake Jones.
Well, good morning, my fine ladies and gentlemen.
And Robert Venable.
Evening or afternoon, depending on when and where you are listening to our voices in your ear holes.
Man, here we are, week 2, season 2. I am so glad to be back in the seat. I've missed this over the summer. Of course, we've been busy touring and
traveling and playing shows and getting tattoos and
yes, which mine is
it healed up nicely.
It's still in the process. And Seth, I apologize.
Man, so Seth, my name's Robert.
Oh, sorry, Robert. I'm so confused. You look like Seth Mosley.
That's strange.
From Full Circle Music.
So does the gentleman sitting right in front of us. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Robert Venable. Over here to my right is Jake Jones. We'll introduce ourselves formally in a second. But in front of Jake Jones and Robert Venable, we've got Seth Mosley.
Hello, gentlemen.
Ooh.
I like it, Robert, when you refer to yourself in third person.
It's kind of weird, but normal for me. Right, Robert? Right.
You mean normal for him?
It's normal for him too, yes. Both of us.
So before we get to our lovely guest today, I want to tell you a little bit about my amazing friend, Robert Venable. Not only does he have one of the most glorious beards in the room.
This is new.
It is a new development, and in preparation for a trip to Europe coming up. Got to look all, got to be grizzly.
Trying to look German.
He's doing a better job than me. I accidentally shaved mine off. He's an incredible drummer, songwriter, singer, even though he says he's not.
Not at all.
He's a producer and engineer, and the guy literally has credits through the roof. I'm honored to call him my friend. He also builds tricycles in his spare time out of used medical equipment, and gives them away to homeless children. There's some legalities that you've been trying to work out with that because of the used medical equipment might be contaminated.
Using the syringes as handlebars was a very bad idea. Our marketing team kind of botched that one when they pushed out into the magazines. The whole recycled tricycle program that we pushed out didn't sell as intended.
So I would say it's the thought that counts, but that is not what the district attorney said, right?
Not at all. So in 2 to 5 years from now, pending good
behavior.
Good behavior, we'll be doing season 3 of maybe even episode 3.
Well, I mean,
we get that far.
We can do it through the phone, through the glass.
Ladies and gentlemen, your stand-up comic for tonight was Jake Jones. Sitting at 4'8", standing at 6 foot. What are you, 6'2"?
6'2", yeah.
Yeah, man. It's weird having a short person who's in the room with us.
Shut up.
Oh, man. This guy plays guitar and sings for the band As We Ascend, formerly of We As Human. Also, songwrites with Shoalsville Music. You and I, we actually wrote a #1 hit
That's right.
Not as many as the guy we're going to talk about in just a second. But you get to push buttons in your own recording studio, produce bands, mix and edit them, make them sound glorious. But my favorite thing, this is how we met. A lot of people don't know this about you. When I got off the airplane at an airport, I was actually going on a cruise, and we got off on an island where the cruise takes off from. Got out of the airplane, walked out front, and there you were at a little booth braiding arm hair, which is weird to me. And
You're about to say armpit hair,
well,
which is the truth.
That's the new part.
Okay.
But Can you tell us how you got into arm hair and armpit hair braiding?
Well, I've always had really long arm hair and really long armpit hair. And I used to try to trim it, but it would, I was going through electric razors, twice a day, a brand new one. It was getting really expensive. And so I thought, how can I get this under control? What do I do? And so I just used my fingers. And because you can
You look
braid,
like you're trying to milk a cat.
well, you
Like,
can braid
what's that
anything with
movie?
hair.
I've got hair. Jones, can you braid me?
Yeah, your beard.
Oh, perfect.
Actually,
Thank you.
yeah,
You probably could right now. It's just kind of gnarly.
But I started doing it just for fun, really, in my spare time. And I thought, I see a need. I think any good business looks at a need and says, how can I help fill that need? And so that's what I started doing. And it's been very lucrative. I took it on the road. I made easily $12. And it's something that
That's because you found the $10 bill on the ground beside the $2 you made, right?
No.
Not at all.
Okay. Anyway,
right.
yeah. But sitting with us today is a legend.
Do you hear that rumble? Yeah.
That's my
That's his
indigestion.
reputation preceding him.
Mr. Seth Mosley, songwriter extraordinaire, on top of being a producer. In fact, we're here in his studio at Full Circle Music in Franklin, Tennessee. Walking just to get into the tracking room where we're at right now, you have to walk past the wall O Grammys.
I might have knocked some of them off.
The wall.
It's tough. Like, I can't fit through the room where all those awards were stabbing me from behind, and it was crazy.
I'm not going to lie, everybody's had those crazy thoughts where they're like, all right, if I were to commit this crime, how would I do it better than somebody else? This is my third time here, and every time I've thought, if I were to steal one of those, how could I scratch off his name or X's name or Jericho's name and put my own?
They're pretty strict about those things. You can't sell them. You can't trade them. You can't do anything to them.
Did you learn this the hard way?
I did.
Is there a pawn shop in town that was looking for you?
I had a lemonade stand on the corner, except for instead of selling lemonade,
Was it a Grammy stand?
it's a Grammy stand. Yeah.
Oh, man, it was a rough life, man.
It is a rough life.
selling all your Grammys. You're like, I have so
No,
many.
you're not. It's
running
like
out of
Super Bowl
space.
rings. You're not allowed to use your influence to whatever, sell them or what. Maybe Super Bowl rings. Maybe it's college football that does that. But
Yeah,
anyway,
right.
they're very strict about it, and it's proprietary. There's a whole documentary being made on this, but there's a proprietary metal that Grammys are made out of. It's called gramium, and that is a real fact.
Wow.
I had no idea until we actually got the statues.
That's crazy.
Also, another little known fact is what it takes to get the statues. There are so many little loopholes. Like, you have to be on 51 or more % of a record, and if you're not on that, you get a certificate that you have to pay for. But the
Right.
statue's free.
Really?
So
Well,
all these,
I thought you had to pay for the statue.
no, the statue's free. You have to pay for the certificate, which has to cost nothing compared to it.
Have you seen the How It's Made Grammys?
Is that what do you mean?
It's an episode of How It's Made,
No, I haven't.
and it's how they make
They
Grammys.
show how they make the statues.
So they didn't talk about gramium?
I don't remember them saying gramium.
I don't remember. Actually, when you said Grammyum, that sounded familiar, but it could just be a weird dream I had after eating some strange food. I
It
don't
sounds
know.
like
highly
a cool
possible.
cereal. Golden gramiums.
Golden gramium.
Or like there's a superhero and that's their
That's his
Like
kryptonite.
kryptonite?
Is gramium. Yeah,
Gramium.
exactly.
That's my kryptonite.
Apparently so.
Gramium.
So you get weak whenever you walk in the studio. Then so
I stay away from them at all costs. That's the only reason I don't have any.
Hey, Seth, what do For King and Country, Skillet, Jeremy Camp, Cutlass all have in common?
they're all awesome.
Are you saying that because you wrote songs with them all? Plus tons more. There's like a whole huge list here, which I'm not going to read all of them because I'll run out of air and probably pass out in my old age. However, so 2005, you won Songwriter of the Year by non-artist, as well as Producer of the Year at the same
It wouldn't be
thing.
2005.
2015.
Yeah, I was going to say I was graduating high school in 2005, and
You could have done
that
it
would have
then.
been impressive if I had
I would
won.
be impressed. Yeah, so 2015 Dove Awards.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Producer and Songwriter of the Year.
Yeah.
Gosh, man. And then Grammys. What are your
Yeah, so
toot your own horn?
Man, been nominated for. To be honest, I should do a better job of like paying attention to these things.
It all
but,
blends together.
well, and that sounds weird. I'm not trying to sound weird or anything, but like when the first time I won a Grammy, I didn't even know the Grammys was on TV. Like
Isn't
I
that
didn't even know
funny?
what was going on. I was on my way to a show to see, because what I really love is going to shows. That's like my favorite thing, and hearing songs that I've been a part of, either writing or producing.
That's a cool feeling.
And you see the crowds. That's way cooler to me than
Yeah.
a statue or something like that, because it's real proof that that these songs are making their way out of this studio and into people's lives. You know,
So how'd you find out that
I
you
got
won
a text
from?
Sean Moffitt, who was a mixer friend of mine.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Hey, congratulations, man!" I was like, "For what?" And he was like, "Oh yeah, you guys just won the album of the year, the Grammys." And that was for King Country Run Wild
It was a good album.
which we literally just got. And I'm always thankful for these things because they're so rare nowadays. But we just got our official, certified gold records for those in the studio here just like 2 days ago. And so that stuff's just, you just can't believe it. I mean, it's great.
So you and I met the first time at my studio that I co-owned with Lester Estelle.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah.
Just down the road here in Franklin, Off the Wall Studios, the very first rendition of that.
Yeah.
With your band, Me in Motion.
Yep.
And we I think we were tracking drums there or something.
Yeah, I think we tracked drums. It sounded amazing, of course.
Thank you. Yeah. And then that's the first time we ever ran into each other.
Yeah, and that was even thinking back now. It's like feels like a whole nother lifetime.
Right.
It's almost like I don't believe in reincarnation, but it kind of feels like that. Like I'm reincarnated as
Seth
some
2.0
songwriter or whatever, But it's just so foreign to me now. But I love that I have that chapter of my story, because I feel like whenever I'm in the room with an artist or a new songwriter or a new whoever coming to town, there's nothing that they are probably going through or that they're going to go to that I didn't walk through. Like,
Man.
It was every broken down van and trailer on the side of the road, and every crap show where like the sound was horrible or nobody was there or catering was spam and red Kool-Aid, like all of those things. So it sounds weird, but I'm thankful for that experience because I know what it takes to get there. And I just have so much respect for the artists that we get to work with who do it every day. Like it's just, it's a calling. I mean, it really is.
We have a million questions to ask you, but we have to probably clarify what we're doing this podcast about.
So today we're actually talking about songwriting, which is why we have such a legendary songwriter with us. But more importantly, there's a lot kind of behind songwriting that even just in researching for this podcast and talking with you, Robert, that has surprised me. And I'm a professional songwriter. And then a lot that goes into songwriting and the songs that we hear that I think a lot of people just have no idea. And you'll be really surprised to hear this.
In today's episode, we're going to talk about everything you can think of. It's going to sound boring in this summation real quick, but bear with us because there's actually a lot of cool facts and figures and I bet you didn't know this and things that we didn't even know while researching for this. But like how much songwriters get paid, how do they get paid, when do they get paid?
Well, Robert, I just want to argue, you say it's going to sound boring. When I'm sitting in the room with you, a 90,000-year-old man, there's never a dull moment. The fact that you're just so old and still talking and breathing is interesting enough. I think you could probably talk about anything and people would listen.
I'm sorry you turned your head. I was trying to read your lips because I can't hear from this part of the room.
What?
No, we're going to make it interesting. Even if you don't even care about, I don't know why you're listening to this podcast if you don't care about the music industry. But if you don't care about the music industry, this is still going to be interesting for you. Let's start with the history of songwriting. I mean,
you invented songwriting, isn't that right?
Yeah, I was clicking a couple sticks together and knocking some rocks, and there all of a sudden,
if I remember, you were actually didn't you carve holes into bones to kind of like a flute or a recorder?
Yeah, that was me. That actually wasn't me. But they say that songwriting existed before written language.
I can believe that.
So before they came up with written context, I mean, obviously people were communicating, whether it be with grunts or words or their own somehow spoken language. The written language didn't come till later, but they had songs already being written. And a song doesn't have to be words and lyrics and melody. It could just be melody or a tune that you whistle or hum. But they say it dates back before there was a written language by, like you said, carving holes in bones and blowing through it like a flute or a lute or a recorder, which is kind of cool. But I did do some research on what could be arguably America's first full-time popular songwriter. His name is Stephen Foster.
That's right.
So this is we're talking about the 1840s, 1850s when he was writing songs. But he was born July 4th. What a patriotic man he was. 1826, guy who had no idea anything about music, was not a musical family that he came from. He was actually the ninth child born.
Well, of course, it was 1826. He was the ninth out of like probably 1,000.
Small school bus of family members.
They probably all lived in a shoe.
His mom didn't know what to do. That's crazy. But he started writing songs at the age of 14.
Let's hear one of those songs. I want you to sing it because I know one. I see one right here.
I'm not going to sing it.
Come on, doo-dah, doo-dah.
Camptown races sing this song all the doo-dah day. Something.
Yep.
Doo-dah, doo-dah, the Camptown racetrack 5 mile long. Oh, the doo-dah day. I went down.
Oh, Susanna, my old Kentucky home, and 200 plus more other songs that Stephen Foster wrote.
Okay, really quick, I want to add a restore point or drop a pin right here. 200 plus more songs, right?
Yeah.
That is, I want to come back to that. He wrote a lot of songs, and there's something to that.
Okay, remember that. So let's talk about Oh, Susanna, one of his most popular, probably his most popular song. It written in 1847. It's been deemed as the first American popular song that we still sing and recognize today.
Oh, Susanna, now don't you cry for me, for I come from Alabama with my banjo on my knee.
And, I mean, obviously there are hymns and stuff like that, but we're talking about globally or internationally popular songs by churchgoers, non-churchgoers. The average Joe knows Oh, Susanna. And, it's been 150 years later and still singing that song.
I think there's something to be said for those really old, simple melodies. In fact, was actually just having a conversation with a songwriter yesterday about how I've heard so often, picking out melodies from old nursery rhymes, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, and just kind of intentionally oversimplifying a melody to make it stick for people.
Yeah.
So their brains aren't overcomplicating anything.
Yeah, we talked about Happy Birthday in another podcast and written by a couple of school teachers.
Yeah, so the fact that I think there's something to pay attention to with these songs that are so old, yet still everyone knows them.
We'll get to this later, but a lot of times songwriters try to pull from familiar melodies to make it somehow stick in the minds and the ears of listeners today. So you might hear some remnants of these simple songs in common popular songs on the radio these days. Like Stephen Foster. Writes some songs, doing well. Gets married to Jane McDowell in 1850. Their relationship was kind of rocky during a split. That's where he got the inspiration to write Jeannie with the light brown hair, which sounds like a Beyonce song on a Jay-Z record. But totally different than that. But then he wrote a ton of songs. He got into minstrel shows. Sure, you've seen it. It's where Caucasian white people paint their faces black and dress like African Americans and try to express stories and get a point across about stories in like these little musicals and plays of what life was like pre-Civil War for African Americans. A lot of these things have been deemed inappropriate or insulting to African Americans these days. Some of them not, but that's how Camptown races came to be. So
that is quite interesting.
That is very interesting.
It's interesting
I
that
never knew that.
So Foster himself lived in Pittsburgh and only really been to the South once. So they say that he really didn't know much about the black culture.
Sounds about right. Hollywood,
right?
Trying to make old westerns.
But he often depicted the people in his songs being hard workers, all the live long day, that kind of thing. And some of the lyrics were deemed insulting to African Americans, so they ended up changing the lyrics, or they just don't sing those songs anymore. But he actually wrote the song My Old Kentucky Home,
We sing one song for my old Kentucky home, for my old Kentucky home far away.
So that song was written in honor of Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin, which was an anti-slavery book, or freeing the slaves. And it expresses great sympathy for the enslaved African Americans. So the black anti-slavery activist Frederick Douglass actually praised the song, and it later became the official song of the state of Kentucky.
Man, so something about Stephen Foster that's kind of maybe ironic is that while he was, of course, a great songwriter, he was a horrible businessman, which I still see so often today.
It's a different side of your brain.
It is. I mean, if you really want the key to just being successful, be good at your craft and be good at being a businessman.
And that's why Seth Mosley is in the room with us today.
That is right. So he sold he sold the most songs for the least amount of money. And for someone that wrote such, prolific songs that have lasted the test of time, literally over 100 years, he didn't even make enough money to support his wife and children, which is sounding eerily familiar to my own story. Seth,
so many stories that we hear of people coming across our paths in the industry. Yeah, just can't support their families with music. So you see some of your favorite musicians. We've talked about this in the before, handing you your Starbucks drink through the drive-through.
Oh, the church I go to, and I think I've actually mentioned this in another episode. My first time to go to that church, because we moved and we were too far away to the church that we had been going to, started going to a new church. My first Sunday there, someone steps down off the stage after worship, and or it was at the end of service, and comes up to me and says, Are you in a band? Is this you? And they pull out their phone, and it's a photograph of me with this woman and her husband while I was working at Moe's Southwest Grill. I had my uniform on and my hat.
Welcome to Moe's.
No joke. Which is like, yep, that's a true story. That's a very much a reality for so many musicians.
Which Moe's?
It was the one in Spring Hill.
Okay.
Yeah.
My first label meeting, guy found me on MySpace, invited me to a meeting at the Moe's in Brentwood. Man, MySpace was that was a big tool back then. I remember reaching out to Fueled by Ramen and getting a response for the band that I was working with, and basically they took a listen to what I was doing and were like, nope.
It was our first real way of having a point of contact with people who were previously untouchable.
Yeah.
We need to get out of Stephen Foster.
Well, he didn't live very long.
That's one way to get rid of him.
He died at the age of 37, completely broke and alone.
Yeah, he after his music career started tanking, which I guess means not being able to float the bills, he moved to New York. His wife and daughter left. He turned to alcohol, and he died in January 13th, 1864.
So at least now we all have some goals in the room. We have
big goals.
We have an end game.
He was the first musician actually to be nominated into the Hall of Fame for Great Americans, and the first American composer whose complete works were published all together at one little package.
Wow. Okay, so this is Stephen Foster we're talking about. Again, you said arguably, but for the purpose of continuity, we will declare right now the first official, professional, full-time American songwriter.
Yeah.
Again, I just want to note, wrote a lot of songs, a whole lot of hundreds, over 200 songs, and we only know a few
3
of them
or 4
today.
of them, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's something of note and something we'll talk with you about a little bit later, Seth.
Let's go current.
Billboard Hot 100 #1 hits. These are the top 3 all-time songwriters based on how many #1 songs they wrote.
On the Billboard Hot 100 chart.
Correct.
Which is a particular chart, but I guess for all intents and purposes, widely noted as the standard.
Yes. #1 is one of my favorite songwriters in the whole world, but more so for the band that he was in, and that is Paul McCartney.
Oh, cool. What band was he in?
Red Hot Chili Peppers, right?
That was Flea.
Oh, Paul McCartney. Was he the guy?
You said
was he an actor?
Yeah, I think so.
I'm just kidding. Come on. Everybody in this room knows who Paul McCartney is. Paul McCartney from the Beatles. the best Beatle in my opinion. And if you say it's John Lennon, I'll fight you. And I think that this list actually proves that point when we get to number 2. But actually, his best song was by the band Wings, called "Silly Love Songs,"
Which was his band.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
How big of a fan are you?
Well, he's my favorite songwriter for the band that he was, his popular band.
His previous band?
The Beatles. I love the Beatles. They are my favorite band.
He had 32 number 1 hits.
That is absolutely insane.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
So the Silly Love Songs by Wings ruled the weekly chart for 5 non-consecutive weeks in May, June, and July of 1976.
What was the second best?
Say, Say, Say.
I was just kidding, but you know that.
He wrote it with Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
Or Michael Jordan, depending on who MJ is. I'm just kidding. It actually spent 6 weeks at number 1 in late 1983, early 1984. Those are his 2 top songs that he wrote. But man, to have written 32 number 1s on this Billboard Hot 100.
And some of those are Beatles songs that he co-wrote with our number 2 placeholder, John Lennon, who has 26 number 1s to his name. So just like Starting Over was his best, it peaked at number 1 on the charts on November 1st of 1980. Those are guys in the past.
They are. Now, number 3, so Robert and I may or may not have a cheat sheet that we're peeking at.
Yeah, well, but Seth does not.
Seth
I
does
do not.
So I want Seth to take a guess at who number 3 is, and I will say he's written...
He's modern.
He's very modern.
No more clues. We'll start adding clues and see if you can guess it.
Max Martin.
Okay, well, that was fast.
Yep.
So obviously knows the market. So John Lennon at 26, Max Martin right on his tails with 22 number 1 Hot 100 songs. Born Carl Martin Sandburg in the late 70s. I think 70s, no, mid 70s.
Yeah, I think I'd go by Max Martin too.
Yeah, so he started working under Dennis Pop of Sharon Records, and he's convinced him to change his name from Carl to Max. So that's kind of a more marketable name. So instead of Carl Sandburg, he went by Max Martin. He studied under Dennis for 2 years and got to work on lots of records with like Ace of Base and Backstreet Boys, where he actually wrote that song by himself.
Mm-hmm.
You're kidding me.
Yeah, so that was like his first like huge break into the market.
Wow.
Hey guys, I'm here announcement. So like, I mean, there's a huge list. If you look at his Wikipedia page, you have to go to more pages to continue seeing all his works that he's written.
Wow.
But like Britney Spears, Baby One More Time, 3, Hold It Against Me, Backstreet Boys, like we just said, Bon Jovi, Kelly Clarkson, Katy Perry, like I Kissed a Girl. Oh, Katy didn't write that? No. Max Martin.
Also California Girls. And
Extraterrestrial. Yeah, all these songs. Last Friday Night, Roar, Dark Horse, Teenage Dream, all are huge hits. That's Max Martin, man. Maroon 5, Taylor Swift, Justin Timberlake, The Weeknd.
We've talked about Max before.
Yeah, with the Dr.
podcast.
Luke thing too.
Yeah. And so those are 22 number 1s. He's written several more songs that you would know. You'd be surprised how many insanely popular songs never made it to number 1 on this particular chart.
It wouldn't surprise me to see him pass at least Lennon, but maybe get up there with McCartney on number 1s because he's still prime.
He's on fire still. It's mind blowing.
It's not like he's on his way out.
No.
He is writing everything you hear right now.
And if he's not, his proteges are.
Right. His name is on it somehow.
Yeah.
Have you ever written with Max?
Have not. It's a bucket list. So Max, if you ever hear this, you know where to find me.
Max, if you hear this, that's awesome.
I think I ate at your restaurant in Stockholm just a month ago at East in Östermalm.
What did you have at his restaurant?
Sushi. It's kind of a like Asian fusion. It's really good. Great sound system in it.
I would hope so.
And I think Dennis Pop was one of the original like owners, and some of the people from Sony Sweden. And I think Max, assuming you still own that, it was really good. The sushi was great.
Well, what should he improve on? What's the weak link?
Probably the pizza.
I mean, if you're ordering sushi,
there wasn't really any pizza. That's maybe something to improve on.
Maybe you need to have pizza.
Add pizza.
Add pizza.
Everybody needs pizza in the restaurant.
Sushi, Asian fusion restaurant.
Asian pizza?
It's of all the ideas you've had today,
that's the one.
That is one.
That's one of them.
That's an idea. So those guys wrote
I'm a Max Martin freak, so sorry to interrupt you, but
no.
I've done more research and as much as you can do because it's hard to find stuff on him.
Yeah.
He's kind of a reclusive
Is that right?
Like, just
He's
doesn't.
buried in a studio.
Yeah. So to find interviews with him is a rare thing. There's not very many out there. So it is my bucket list. Like, yes, to do something with Max Martin someday. So
Dang, man. Yeah, he's just
putting
so
that out in
talented.
the universe. In the
Throw it
ether.
out there into the pod waves.
Yeah,
If you like it, you can keep it. If not, you can just throw it right back.
exactly.
I mean, he's writing so many hits, like hits.
Yeah.
But he might not be doing it all on his own. A lot of people actually co-write. And there's a reason for that. In my research, I found that why co-writing songs might be better than just writing a song by yourself.
How many hits, like how many insanely popular songs that you've written did you write by yourself, Seth?
0.
Not even one.
Not even one. And Max Martin, which I didn't even realize that one that you mentioned, I didn't realize that was all him because his big MO is co-writing.
Right.
It's collaboration. I don't think any of his have been.
No, after
Solo.
that, I think he wrote that one by himself, and then everything else was co-written, at least 2 people.
Yeah.
And actually, a new study by Music Week magazine shows that it now takes an average of 4.53 writers to create a hit single. So that's 4 complete humans and a little over half a human.
Is this
in the
like
room.
amputee? Is this maybe
It's equal opportunity, man.
dwarfism, an LP?
Songwriting leaves many bodies in its wake, so it's one of those
Makes sense.
situations
Okay.
that
Somebody
didn't make
brought
it
down
out
previously.
Somebody didn't make it out of the writing room.
All right.
Kind of that type of
I
deal.
hope to never be the 0.53.
I would take the
Of a human.
0.53
Just
for a Max
depends on
Martin
which
song.
Yeah, exactly. I would take 0.53 of a. I want it that way.
I'm not
So-
talking percentage. I just mean, I don't want to lose almost half my body.
Still worth it.
It's worth it.
I'd roll into a session and be like, here we go.
Take my arms.
Take all of me.
Take me.
This is like a Christian song waiting to happen.
Want it that way.
So the 100 biggest singles of 2016 in this study that I was looking at, how many of those do you think were credited to a single artist?
I would guess, if any, 1 or 2.
Said 4. You're actually probably right, but 4 were only credited to a single artist out of the top 100. Mike Posner's "I Took a Pill in Ibiza," which was actually a remake. That was a remix of it. His original one's very acoustic sounding. You should
Really?
go look that up. And then Calvin Harris's "My Way," and then 2 songs by the rock band 21 Pilots, which is actually more than one person in the band. So if you want to actually credit just one person, those 2, Mike Posner and Calvin Harris, would be the 2 single songwriters out of the top 100 hits. But the best-selling song of 2016, that year that this whole study came out, Drake's "One Dance," needed 8 writers. But that even pales in significance to Mark Ronson's "Uptown Funk." How many writers do you think were on that song?
I actually happen to know the answer to that. Do you, Seth?
I think I heard it was 13.
13.
Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, to be fair, some of those were because of the whole lawsuit with the Gap Band's 1979 hit "Oops, Upside Your Head," which they're like,
They ripped it.
you ripped that off.
Yeah.
No, we didn't. Okay, we'll credit them. So
Yeah.
all those songwriters combined, 13 people had to make that hit, but we all know it.
Yep.
So this is clearly a trend. Again, with prolific songwriters like Max Martin, who is pushing for co-writes, and the industry as a whole is pushing for more co-writes, especially with the music industry changing like it is, and you've got lots of blending and fusions and people trying to figure out how to keep this a lucrative business. So you start, you're a Christian writer, you come to Nashville and you start writing with country writers, or you're a rock writer, you come to Nashville and start writing with country writers, or whatever it is, pop and rock, and all these different writers starting to come together to join forces. Of course, that number is going to go up. Just 10 years ago, the average, and mind you, 10 years ago was 2008, which is crazy. That doesn't feel like it was that long ago, but
It's nuts.
the average number of writers on a hit single was 3.5.
So
3.52,
one less person
yeah.
in the room.
One less person in the room. And 14 of the year's top 100 songs.
Would you like to know who that person is?
The one person that was not in the room?
Yeah. It's the artist.
That's actually probably very correct.
They're on the songs now.
Yeah. All the art and producers too are getting in and saying,
Yep.
I got to be on this song. Like, if you're going to cut
Everybody.
this song, I'm in it.
It's part of the business model. It's the way things change. So
We'll write you in with a writer's cut, even if you're not writing it.
Yep.
Yeah. The industry's changing, man. Even in the news recently, which we'll get to later. But
But yeah, 2008, There were actually 14 songs credited to one person, including...
As opposed to 4, 10 years later.
Yeah. Amy Winehouse's Rehab and Arctic Monkeys' When the Sun Goes Down.
Those rock bands, man, they keep it in house.
Keep it in house. So what's the cause of this?
Well, in the past, as you know, bands would go into the studio and they'd write an album and it'd do all right, and they'd do another album and it'd do better, and then do another. And they're starting to hone their craft as songwriters. Like, we know now what it takes to do it. So this band or the artist would get in there and do 2 or 3 albums, which is a long turnaround for the ROI, the return on investment. It's a long stretch, a lot of minor leagues before you get to the pros, if you want to put it that way in sports analogies. But it takes them forever. But now we're on a fast track. Labels are on a fast track to make that money. Like, we're going to put money into it. We need to get money out of it. What's the fast way to do that? Let's take a whole bunch of seasoned writers, put them all together, let them put all their ingredients in the thing, put it in the oven. It'll come out a day later as a ridiculous, cool song. And hits equals money. So instead of taking 2 to 3 albums to start honing your craft, like, let's just take the crafts that are already honed by other people, the same 10 writers in a certain genre, throw them in the pot in different combinations, like 3 today, 4 tomorrow, whatever, put a hit together and pump it out, make our money back immediately.
So I definitely, coming into the industry, it was quite a surprise to me, this whole co-writing thing. Not like oh my gosh, but definitely I didn't know that. And it's somewhat of a mystery. We hear the term singer-songwriter all the time. And I know in the past that was a big deal. I remember it was a big deal in 2007, 8, when Taylor Swift came out as this young girl and she was writing her own songs. But as just a consumer at the time, I didn't know, was she writing all these songs by herself? Was she writing them with someone else? What's the significance of the artist actually writing on their song versus not writing on their song? And Seth, I know that we had kind of talked earlier about the music and how there's not really much of a mystery to it. Well, maybe it was a mystery to me because I'm a little slow. There's definitely a formula to how this works.
In terms of how these songs are written, yes. A lot of people, new artists, come in saying, I want to change this whole thing. I want to break the mold. I want to do my own different thing. And then they figure out that in order to get played on radio, their stuff cannot be just so off the wall and left field. It has to fit a format. Yeah. And radio in certain genres is the driving factor. Like in country music, it's all about radio. In Christian music, it's all about radio. In rock music, it kind of used to be that way. It seems like it's a little less maybe
radio,
now,
what's
but
that?
It's kind of not even really a thing anymore. But like top 40, I mean,
yeah.
All of that stuff. So you're driven by trying to get one of those 10 to 15 coveted slots that, mind you, Ed Sheeran's also fighting to get, and Justin Bieber's fighting to get. So you're not only up against your peers, you're up against who's already there.
Yeah.
So to break in, you have to fit the format. I just cannot, and I hate telling it to artists, and I really don't ever just flat out say it, but like what you want to accomplish, what you're saying you want to accomplish, and what is actually realistic is physically impossible.
Do you think this takes the artistry out of the art of music? I mean, the creativity, like there's no individuality if there's a format?
I think the artistry is within that format. And that's where the true artists are able to succeed. That's why working with guys like For King and Country, who you brought up, who understand that there is a format and they do not deny that.
So do they write for that format, or do they write in you when you're writing with them? Or like, hey guys, no, we got to do it this way?
Yes and no. I would say in every genre, there's what I would call your lane wideners, like your boundary pushers or whatever. And they're definitely one of those. Some are meant to just go straight down the middle, but they're the ones that are easily forgotten. Like there was that, Dr. Luke phase a few years back where every artist that came out sounded like Dr. Luke.
Yeah.
And I couldn't tell the difference between Kesha and, whatever the new Katy Perry single was, or Jessie J, any of those things. They kind of all just blended together. So the struggle nowadays, because radio is such a powerful thing, it's being replaced by streaming, by Spotify, by Apple Music, and they will argue that it's a more democratic, it's an even playing field. you don't have to appease the gatekeepers. You can put your music up, it gets on the platform, it gets played, it gets heard. However, there's a far smaller number of gatekeepers now because they're the playlist curators.
Right. That's a whole new thing.
So you're not only going after 80 stations, you're going after one guy.
Right.
For whatever your format is.
And a lot of these playlist gatekeepers, if you will, the road maintenance guys who get to define the lanes, might be just sitting in their basement of their parents' house. Or,
I mean, the big ones nowadays work for Spotify.
Or or hired / employed by the companies that the platforms are on.
Yeah. And hear me say, I'm not dissing that. I don't know a better way to do it than that.
Right.
And they're doing the best job they can. None of them are just sitting there saying, I want to screw new bands or whatever. They actually really take pride. The ones that I know and that we work with take pride in breaking new artists.
Finding the new talent.
But that's a part of the fun of their job. However, the talent has to rise to the top. The cream has to rise to the top, even for that.
I wish iTunes could find some better playlist curators.
I mean, iTunes' idea of rock music or hard rock music or metal is very interesting to me. Like looking at the breaking hard rock charts and seeing some of the bands that are up there. Like that's not rock music at all.
Just a ukulele and someone.
Why is this rock?
Singing with some reverb on their vocal.
It's interesting, and I don't really know a whole lot about the rock genre aside from a couple bands that we've worked with, but it's very interesting, and Apple, I think they would admit that they've lagged severely behind Spotify, and they're playing catch up now, and they're doing a lot better of a job. And the people that we know there are great, but it's the same issue, just a different platform. The bottleneck is still the same for artists and songs.
Man, I have a million questions to ask you about this in your songwriting process, and we have some bombs to drop on you, the listener, about the songwriting industry, things that we've been kind of holding for a while, as well as how you get paid, how much you get paid, and how much are these people that we hear on the radio getting paid, and how that works out for songwriters. But we have to take a break first.
We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Seth Mosley, and I got a huge announcement for all of you songwriters out there. The Song Chasers commercial songwriting course is now available, and you can get it for a special deal at turneduppodcast.com/Seth, just like my name, SETH. This is a comprehensive course in commercial songwriting for anyone who wants to be a part of writing a hit song. Again, go over to turneduppodcast.com/Seth. Everything you need to know about commercial songwriting, turneduppodcast.com/Seth.
And we're back.
Welcome back. No, I'm not going to talk like that.
I like saying it that way. I don't know. It's exciting. So we're here with Seth Mosley.
Yeah, we haven't gone anywhere.
And amazing, legendary songwriter, as well as producer and engineer. But we're here to talk to him about his songwriting. So, how much are we talking money wise?
We're sitting in a ridiculous recording studio in an awesome neighborhood in a great part of Tennessee. You're doing well for yourself, Seth. And just to put this in perspective of how many songs you're writing, volume wise, and then how successful those songs are doing. Because at this rate, the mechanical royalty for every song that sells on an album, if you wrote a hit song by yourself and that song sells, you get approximately 9.1 cents mechanical royalties for that song.
Each time someone buys that song.
Each time that either someone buys the album that song's on or the song sells as a single through iTunes or whatever. But you just said you're not writing a song by yourself. So that 9.1 cents is split amongst all of the songwriters on that track.
So let's use Uptown Funk as an example here.
13 writers. 9.1 cent every time that sells. So what's that equate to?
So for every one purchase of that song, each writer is getting almost 1 cent.
Assuming they're even splits.
Assuming. That's assuming,
a thing too.
And that's quite an assumption.
That's a whole nother conversation.
Assuming they're even splits, just meaning that every songwriter gets the same percentage.
Equal percentage, yeah.
They're getting 0.7 cents.
Wow.
So
for every two, they get $0.1 1.5.
Correct.
Wow. But I bet that's sold more than 4 times.
We know that song
sold a few copies.
millions of times. And, even at that, I'm just going to do this math really quick.
There's an exception to the whole songwriter split 9.1 cent per unit sold thing, and that's with ghostwriters, which we'll get to in a minute, because they're often pay for hire. We'll just get to ghost hires in a minute. But yeah, that's the only, I guess, exception to the 9.1 rule as a writer.
So at
a big exception to it anyway.
At 1 million copies, if you wrote and got an even share of that song as the 13th writer, you got a check for $7,000. $7,000 for selling 1 million copies.
Now that's as the songwriter though, and there are other ways to make money off of the sales of songs.
How long would $7,000 cover the utilities in this studio?
Well, we have a large house. So me and my wife are actually not really, extravagant luxury people. Like we have one car and it's a Nissan. So this house is way bigger than we would ever need. But the fact is that we don't own a commercial studio. I don't have to go anywhere. It gives me 2 extra hours a day with my daughters, basically.
Yeah.
So that's why we do this. But we have 5 air conditioning units in here. So those things go out. I guess that would cover 1 air conditioning unit.
Dang.
Yeah. I just paid them on a house I own out in New Mexico.
And it's hot outside, guys.
It's hot.
It is hot.
I haven't been outside today, but I'm taking your word for it.
It's hot.
So
it's already hot.
So that's you need to sell a lot of copies or write a lot of songs.
Do you want to jump into ghostwriters, or should we talk to Seth for a minute? In your songwriting process, personally, strip it down to how you work. Do you prefer music first or lyrics first? What's your process?
For me, and I think that's a great question, because it's like, why in the world would you need 13 people? But it's all strengths and weaknesses. That's how when we're teaching songwriters to come through our things, I always teach people first thing, identify what's your strengths and what's your weaknesses. For me, it's always been music/melody. Depending on the genre, sometimes like if it's I've done Christian music for so long and have had a good track record there. I feel like it's almost like learning to speak a language. So I can write a Christian lyric. Now, me being newer to the country market, I really love having a lyric person in the room.
Sure.
So because they know it, they've either grown up in it, they've written 5,000 songs in it, whatever it is. It's just so my process is I like to start with music and melody, or sometimes I'll start with a song title. Like that for me is a really good jumping off point.
I was going to say, what's an example? Is there
a song title
that has made it now?
Well, I mean, just because it's top of mind, me and another friend in the Christian space, Mia Fields, she's another just beast of a songwriter. We wrote 3 on the new Francesca Battistelli record.
She's so talented.
And the first song started with a song title, and that was one called Royalty. It's, you can go get it on iTunes and stuff now, but that one started from that. To contrast it, we did another one on her record that was called You Belong. That one started with a conversation, and then we just started making a very theatrical, Greatest Showman type piece of music, and then the title came after that.
Let's strip it down even further. Do you have a notepad on your phone with all sorts of work? Oh, I'm looking at it right now.
I have a Trello card.
Oh, that's cool.
Or I have a Trello board.
So, and it's just concepts or ideas, or like that's a really
titles.
Cool
like
word.
This is dozens of titles I just collect all the time.
Go ahead and just send that to me.
I have a category of titles. I have titles must write. I have one of used, like ones I already did.
Good call.
And then if that's pretty much all I have. So there's a bunch of crap in there. Like I don't know why I would have written this down, but I have one called Sunday, Sunday, Sunday. Probably because I heard the guy say it on the radio ad or something. I was like,
coming to the Civic Center.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe I was thinking of it as like a sync thing or an ad song or something like that, but it's probably never going to get written. I write all, I don't censor myself. I just write all of them down.
That's smart.
And then when one sticks out, like, I'll just move it over to the title must write section.
Sure.
So that's kind of my method. It works well for me, and
that's cool.
I have the same thing with I have a track starts Trello board too.
So okay, it's a Tuesday morning. Songwriting session starts at 10. XYZ band comes in here, or songwriter comes in here, the singer or whoever you're writing with for that group. let's say Francesca comes in. We're using her as an example. You guys sit here and just look at each other and like, now what? Like, what's the first move? Do you like say, hey, let me look at my little board here? Or you like, she go, I have a melody in my head, or hey, listen to this guitar chord I came up with, which is cool.
No, not any of those things.
So what's the first downbeat? What happens?
We just talk for 30 minutes or 40 minutes.
That's where I was going with this. Jake, you and I have written a lot of songs together. We've co-written with some of the biggest names in country music, songwriters wise, and we've never met them until they show up at the studio. And that seems to be the trend. You just sit there and talk. You pour coffee or Red Bull or water or whatever you're drinking together, and you just talk about life. Like, hey, did you hear this new song? Oh, hey, what's in the news with that? Hey, I like your car. What kind of motorcycle you ride? Whatever. What do you do Friday night? That kind of thing. And you just get to know the person because we come from totally different backgrounds, totally different experiences, different families, different home lives. Everything is different. But you have a few hours to try to figure that out and knock out a song together. So you spend the first 30 minutes just talking.
Yeah, because I really do believe, and we talked about the formula. There is a formula. There's no two ways about it. But I do believe in authenticity as well too. So I think writing from a place that is real to you, whether it's something you're experiencing now or one of the co-writers is experiencing, or even a friend, something. I mean, we're kind of, that's what we are as songwriters, is we're always just mining people's stories and putting them out there for the world to hear. So don't make friends with us. Like we'll tell your dirt to the world.
Right.
You know,
is there ever a time where you don't get that liberty to come up with the concept? I know there's a thing in the industry called pitch sheets, and there are often suggestions from labels or management that say, hey, we need a song about.
You know, the pitch sheets or briefs. I mean, there's a lot of versions of that. There's who's looking lists. We keep those more so in country. I don't know that there's a whole lot of genres outside of country that you would even, nowadays, the goal is always to write with an artist for their record.
Could you briefly summarize what a pitch sheet is? What's that look like? I mean, is it inbox email stuff? Or?
Just a simple, it could be a Word document or a Google Doc, just saying, this is what this person is looking for. Let's just take the new High Valley record, for instance, we're producing for Warner. And it'll list the producer, so it'll say, Seth Mosley, X O'Connor on it, and stylistic references, like, which we didn't give them any of these, so I have no idea how they got this, but they have like Keith Urban and like Mumford and Sons or something, and
so make it sound something like this.
Yeah, and content wise, do we want up tempo? Do we want down tempo? What is it need to be pop? Does it need to be?
Yeah. So the label sends that out to publishers essentially. For the most part,
Music Row, they're probably the biggest source of it. So if people are listening out there, that's probably the best, honestly, thing you could subscribe to. Like, because they have a pitch sheet. They'll email me once a quarter. What are you still working on this record? What do you need? Like that kind of stuff. Right?
And when you say Music Row, there's obviously the physical Music Row.
Yes, sorry, it's a publication.
It's a publication.
Yes.
I think you have to pay to be on that. Like, I don't.
Yeah, I don't think it's that much.
I don't think so either.
So that's probably the best source if you're looking to get into country. Now, outside of that, sky's the limit. I mean, Sync, you could talk a little bit about Sync, because you'll get what we call briefs from like a ad company or music supervisors looking for X, Y, and Z. I mean,
so you say Sync, and for the layman out there, that's that music for commercials or TV or movie stuff. That's for placement for picture,
music
film, television, video, or video games. Yeah, exactly.
Man. So as much as we might have in our minds that these songs kind of happen 100% organic. My favorite country artist was driving his tractor out in the field during harvest season and had this cool idea for a song.
Just lost his wife. It was horrible.
Yeah.
And, grabbed his pen and paper that he keeps right beside him and pinned it down, and then went to the studio a couple days later and was like, man, I had this song idea. I want to track it.
That's probably the story that gets told.
Right.
But a lot of the time
story
it's
that
not.
never happens.
Wait, so in these radio interviews with your favorite artists, when like, hey, what was your inspiration for this? They have to invent a story for that?
A lot of the time, yes.
What?
Or take something that has happened in a similar time frame and just relate it to. I mean, think about the artist that didn't write the song. Like, how do they relate it?
Right.
So the best artists know how to communicate and weave it in and not feel like it is just out of left field. But there have been some where they'll invent specifics. Like I'll be listening to the radio and like, yeah, so I was driving on 65 and I saw this sign and so on. So it's like, no, you didn't. Like that was a title we brought in that morning. Like,
Right.
Not that I don't care. Like credit to me, whatever. I'd rather it be a good story for the listener. And
So I wonder if the Chainsmokers were really ever in the backseat of their Rover. My daughter's gonna be very disappointed in that.
that is a great question.
Yeah. So that's quite interesting to learn that a lot of this is kind of, and I'm gonna make it sound more I'm gonna make it sound more scandalous than it really is. But a lot of this is kind of cooked up in a studio from a list that somebody got in their inbox from a publication that a record label sent. And some people sat down and said, oh, okay, hey, I actually have an idea that I think works with what they're looking for here. Let's write this song. And or the song's already written and let's pitch it. And then now, you've got Mr. Country Artist or Mrs. Country Artist on the radio saying, yeah, I was driving up 65 and this is, I was thinking blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, not even close.
I actually saw you in your Mercedes sedan.
Yeah, exactly.
But this is
Starbucks.
Oftentimes I think because music touches our hearts in such a personal and unique way outside of other forms of media or even just our average everyday things, our brains want to have a more grandiose idea of what's happening here.
We romanticize it.
Exactly.
But this is the unsexy truth about the songwriting industry is that 99% of it is a day on a calendar.
Right. And especially for the professional songwriter, you're doing like what Stephen Foster did, where you're writing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of songs with the knowledge that there's a good chance maybe only a small handful of those will ever actually become noteworthy. And few people are as fortunate as Max Martin, Paul McCartney, John Lennon, and Seth Mosley to actually have several hits and to continue to be able to grow. And the trick to that is not a trick at all. Is that right?
It's not a trick at all. It's that thing of it's 90% perspiration and 10% inspiration.
And as cliche as it sounds, that was something when I started getting into songwriting really baffled me that, when I was quite green, I would write a song. That song was my baby. It was my child. I wrote it. It was my emotion. It was the song about that one girl or that time that person did that one thing. And it happened and I was so sad or happy or whatever. And the world needed to hear it and it was so good and got my song. And then if I ever wrote another one, now I have two songs and, joining a band like, hey guys, I have these songs. Got to hear these two songs I wrote.
Exactly.
And the truth of the matter is it's not really that far off from gambling. You're playing odds and it's a numbers game. And of course you want to be good at it and you have to be good at it. But the way to get good at it is by doing it a lot.
Well, you think about batting averages, it's very much like that. I mean, if you're batting 1,000, you're playing in little leagues. If you're batting 500, you're playing in minor leagues. If you're batting 300, you're playing in the majors,
right.
And you're killing it. Like if you're batting three, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Songwriting, like you said, is so true. I mean, I was just trying to pull up my. We use an app called SongSpace just to keep track of all of our songs and everything. I was trying to pull that up, and I can't get it to work. But I think there was like 800 or 900 songs in there last I checked.
My gosh.
So,
And how many number ones just across any genre do you have?
including songs that we've produced and written, it's over 25 at this point. But ones that I was a writer on, maybe 20.
And that's out of
8 or 900.
8 or 900.
And even out of those number ones, like what format is it? Like, is it a big radio song? Like there's a lot of different types of,
Right.
There's a wide variety there.
Yeah.
So of songs that you can truly point to and say, this is where thankfully we were able to build our house from or something like that. Like you can count them on like one hand or two hands.
Yeah.
All right, honestly, when you wrote one of those songs, any of them, pick one, did you ever have that feeling like, I know this is a hit, this is going to be a song that does really well? Or is it like, does this surprise you? Like, I knew it was going to be a good song, but I didn't know it was going to be that good? Or like, this one's going to kill?
It's I just wrote another song. Here's another song.
In general, what I would say is my goal at the end of every session is to feel like that could be one of those.
Sure.
So the short answer is no, I don't know, but I want to leave at the end of every session feeling like that could potentially be one of those. There are your handful of days where you're like, I'm just not sure. And there are a lot more surprises than there are accurate predictions too, you know?
That's completely true.
So
100% true. Because you don't know, at the end of the day, really, you're writing songs for the listener.
it's for
more
not
than
for
anybody
you.
else.
Yeah.
And that's a large swath of people who are affected by a lot of different factors. And you don't know, because that song you wrote today may not hit an outside ear for a year or 2 or 3. And you don't know how society is going to affect or culture is going to change that person's perception of your song. And I'm getting way deep into it.
Yeah.
But that's why it's such a mystery and why you can't take every song you write and treat it like it's The Ring and your Gollum and
You
and it's your
will
precious.
literally become that 0.53 of a person if you do of that song. You'll get killed. You just can't live that way. And I see that with new songwriters, especially a lot. Is they take every song, they put so much pressure on it. Like, this has to be the one. This is the one. It's not the one. Like, just write another one. Maybe, and then 10 years you look back, maybe that was the one.
Right.
But it doesn't matter. You have to do it because you love it.
Yeah.
So what happens formality wise? You get in here, you write a song, you're like, awesome, that was a good one. High five, good job, everybody. What do you have tangibly or digitally at the end of the songwriting session? Is it like an iPhone voice memo of you and a guitar? Are you like full out tracking at that point? Like, what's the next step? What happens?
I can only speak to my process.
Sure.
And my process has always been to treat everything like it's a finished, on the ready to go to radio production.
So you write a song and it sounds like it's on an album already.
That's the goal by the end of the day.
By the end of the day.
Yeah.
Like-
or by the end of the session. Sometimes it may take 2 or 3 sessions to finish, but by the end of the session, I want it to sound like it could go to the radio.
And when you're done, is there ever a time you're like, I dig it, but I mean, it's been like 3 weeks, it pops up on your phone, on your Bluetooth, and you're like, oh wait, man, I don't like this verse at all. Do you ever go back and redo anything, or is it like, we're done?
Oh, all the time. Yeah, totally. And it depends on the artist too. There are some artists that it may take a year, like, and you revisit it from time to time. But there are other ones that will, like, one of the biggest songs I was a part of, I mean, it probably took an hour to write. So it's just, there's no sign, like, there's a formula to the song itself, but there's no formula to the process.
Right?
What song was that? I just want to know.
It was a song with High Valley. It was a country single. It did really well last year, called She's With Me. And I think we wrote the whole thing in like 60 minutes, and
That's awesome.
has probably been my top earning song of all
Wow.
to this point, my career. So
That is awesome. So, and I also happen to know, just because you really are, I mean, I can't stress this enough to our listeners, you're not a nobody. You don't have those trophies hanging on your wall because no one's heard of you.
You're very highly regarded in this industry.
And so I've been researching you for a while, and I happen to know that
That's called stalking.
well,
R&D, stalking.
by the way,
You don't set up fake Instagram accounts and call it R&D.
I like those new the new elastic band Hanes that you picked up last week. I picked myself up some too, since I saw that's what you were using, and
That's why I posted all, man.
But I do happen to know that the way you treat your tracks of your songs, the way that you do that, is a big reason why you were able to get some of those early opportunities that have led you to today. And I know that for myself personally, it's been quite inspiring because
That's awesome.
my previous band, we were signed to Atlantic, and I know that you actually wrote with our former lead singer once or twice, I'm not sure, but they would ship him all over the place to write with different songwriters, and I think just for sake of the bill, if it was a song that more than just he and the other writer were going to be on, then we essentially would write a song together, and then he would take that song to another writer at the label's request, and because they don't trust you with their money, they want to make sure that you've got a hit writer,
It's a track record.
on the song. So it'd be a song maybe but all that to say, we would get some of those demos back from big songwriters, and they sound atrocious. And so I think, I would have never guessed such a thing, and how impressive it can be to anyone in the industry to hear a demo and be like, is this the demo or is this the real thing?
Yeah.
And so that's just a rabbit trail.
Do they ever use those tracks that you do? Like,
All
or
the
do they-
time.
Yeah? So
All the
they
time.
keep them, do they, when you turn in a song, like say, hey, we're going to cut this, what do you deliver to them?
So a lot of the times it's not the label. Like it's whoever's producing it will be the
Okay,
next
so the
step.
producer.
So like, and sometimes that's us. It just depends on if we have a pre-existing relationship or what the agreement has been. So if there's another producer, we'll send the tracks over. Sometimes they'll keep them. Sometimes they'll redo them.
Yeah.
But as far as turning it into our publishers, it will usually just be an MP3 with like as best a demo as we can, with a song lyric, with the writer names, date of creation, and song splits, which usually in our world is always even splits. We always push 100% of the time for even splits.
I assume you bring that up before you start writing, or how does that work? Like, hey,
Well, it's
we're on the same
interesting.
page here, or what?
It's interesting. In Nashville, it's just assumed.
Yeah, it is.
It's just known. In a lot of LA, it's just assumed. But in certain circles, it's not. And it's addressed on the back end, which can get squirrely, you know.
Yeah.
But I'm always open-handed with it. There's only ever been one time in my entire career out of 900 songs that I've pushed back. And that was because we talked about it on the front end.
Right.
And then they reneged on it.
That's not a good thing to do.
No, it's not. So it's just a bad, I mean, you know, lying is one thing. Like I can forgive just, hey, we forgot to talk about this and, you know, but
Yeah.
anyway, that's a whole nother rabbit trail.
It just makes sense.
Well, I even heard Taylor Swift talk about it. You know, before she writes with anyone, it's even splits or we're not writing.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's just a bit of psyche. You know, if the three of us right now were to write a song together, you know, I might be nervous because you're a much more accomplished songwriter than myself. And so if we were not doing even splits,
You'd
then
be fighting for.
even in my mind, I'd be battling with, oh man, he's already writing so much more of this song than me. You know,
It kills creativity. It
totally
absolutely kills it.
And everyone's more concerned about how much of the song is theirs and how much did they contribute, and then also trying to keep track of it as you go. And like, wait, I wrote that line, but he changed the one word in the line. What does that mean?
Yeah, there is physically no way to separate yourself in that scenario where you know your words and your contributions are being measured for it to be a best idea wins environment. That cannot exist in that scenario.
And I think that intellectual property is not the only thing that you contribute to a song. You
No.
know? And that's why just doing even splits works so much better. And then on the back end, you know, if we are going to try to quantify it, there are going to be some days where you contribute most of the song.
Exactly.
And there's going to be other days when you contribute hardly any of the song. And
Yeah.
at the end, the hope is that it pretty much, you know, evens out.
Yeah, and here's the deal. If it's talked about on the front end and you knowingly go into a situation knowing that it's not even splits, that's totally your call if you want to
It's
do
all
that or not.
negotiable.
right?
Yeah. So I've been part of several things where that's been the case. And I knowingly went in knowing that I'm probably going to get less on this than I'm used to, but it's a project I want to do for whatever reason it is.
Yeah.
So splits being even, I'm all for it. I feel like that's a good way to just take your mind off of it and let's get creative.
And this is all pertaining to songs that we write and splits in terms of the percentage out of 100%, how much of the percentage of the song you're going to get, so that how much of that 9.1 cents is yours every time the song sells.
Right.
But there is a completely separate scenario that happens. It's specific to other, you know, some genres more than others, where these ideas don't necessarily matter or count, or they're measured differently. And what is that,
Yeah,
Robert?
there's a side step to that, which is ghostwriting, which is essentially someone who's writing the song without, like, intentionally not getting credit for it. So, Jake, you and I are going to write a song together, and it's just not happening. I'm like, hey, Seth could knock this out of the park. Seth, what do you think about us paying you $20,000 to write this song for us? But that's all you get. You get 20 grand, and then let us say that we wrote it. And Seth's like, I'm $1 million, bro. So, okay, we'll pay you $1 million. And he does it. And then we put out a song. And it's like, this is the Jake and Robert Band, the best song in the world.
It's a great name.
And we wrote it. So we keep that 9.1 cents. We split it between you and I, Jake. And Seth is done doing other things, but he got his $1 million because that was work for hire. So that's a thing that happens. And honestly, a lot in hip hop, not a lot in hip hop, more so in hip hop than I know of in other genres, where rappers and artists agree to have somebody else write their lines for them, which is kind of frowned upon in the industry just because of how it is. and the personal relationships that rappers have with other rappers, whether it be good or bad relationships. I mean, it's weird putting out a diss track that someone else wrote, which is very current, and Jake will talk about in a second. But the ghostwriters are typically paid anywhere between 10 and 20 grand up front for their anonymous contributions. And if it's a big label project, even more than that. And popular rappers even charge 50 grand upwards just for a cameo spot or writing a verse. I mean, I'm guessing Timbaland or something, or Dr. Dre was to write a line that costs more than Robert Venable writing a line in a hip hop song.
Well, I think the hope for the songwriter is that they make more than they would have made had they not taken the,
Well, you're taking a gamble, right?
Right. And then, of course,
Funny enough, I've never, ever even heard of a scenario like that. So it probably is just in completely different genres or cultures or whatever than I'm used to working in.
And I wonder on the flip side, if it's not as much the artist asking someone else to write, or I mean, they came to Dr. Dre and say, hey, you would make our career jumpstart if you would just do this verse for us. Dr. Dre's like, I've never heard of you, Jake and Robert Band. I'll do it for 50 grand right now. I'll write it. You just keep my name off of it. Because he's like, maybe this will tank, or I don't approve of your guys' politics.
And the other thing is the artist
could
could be making a bet based off of them thinking it's going to be $1 million song.
Absolutely.
And they're getting a great deal if they pay him 50 grand.
Right. You never know what's going to happen. Or they just wasted 50 grand and they get to tell their grandkids that Dre wrote that.
Exactly.
But there are some examples that have come to light, which I don't know are supposed to be public or not.
You were telling me about one earlier that just blew my mind. I thought it was hilarious.
The I'll Be Missing You by Puff Daddy, P. Diddy and the Fam.
Oh, yeah.
Was a tribute to Biggie Smalls. It features P. Diddy, or Puff Daddy at the time, Biggie's wife, Faith Evans, and 112. Diddy's lines were actually ghostwritten by Jay-Z's associate, Sauce Money.
You're kidding.
Nope. So that's Puff Daddy's song. That's his song. Yet his line in the song was written by Sauce Money.
Well,
which is weird to me.
Totally weird. And I wish I had more information. This is kind of off the cuff. So this weekend, you and I, the weekend prior to this recording, you and I were in the car together for like 20...
A good 30 hours over
yeah.
the course of the weekend.
And so we were going through a lot of music. And one thing that kind of hit the headlines week before last, was this Eminem, Machine Gun Kelly back and forth feud, and they're writing diss tracks. That's diss, not disc. Diss tracks about one another. And so, growing up in the 90s, I listened to Eminem when I was younger, and so one of the song that Machine Gun Kelly was responding to with his Rap Devil track was a song called Not Alike. And so as we were in the car, I was writing and we were listening to this song, just, kind of curious to know what's all this hubbub about. And I scroll down to the bottom in iTunes and it lists the songwriters of any and every song that they have, as long as the information's in the metadata. And on this particular song, Not Alike, there are listed 4 writers, which I find really interesting. It's Eminem with one feature, so one other artist rapping.
Who are the other 2
on the track? And the thing is, they use their actual, like, their legal names as songwriters, not their their hip hop names or whatever. So I don't, and you actually might know who these are. Either one of you, I don't. But of course, Marshall Mathers, Eminem.
He's the real Slim Shady.
Please stand up. R. Montgomery, B. Chambers, and R. Spencer Jr. or R. Spence Jr. Sorry, and but it's funny because it's a diss track. It's a diss track. It's Eminem dissing someone else. And
I just picture a bunch of people in a room going, "Oh, you should tell him that his hair looks weird." No,
tell him that his shoes are dumb.
Tell him it's a submachine gun. That's funny. Write that.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the times in the hip hop world, as I understand it, it's maybe 2 or 3 of them were the track guys. And so one guy, it's a very communal way of building beats and tracks.
So you're saying you can get writer's credit for coming up with just like the beat idea?
Absolutely.
Well, it was produced by Dre, and I guess I just kind of assumed that he was the beat guy, but I really have no idea.
But he may have, how it works a lot of the time, he probably has his proteges, and some dude brought him a beat, and then he put a twist on it or something, and then that's very common. And it might have been that 2 other guys were sitting in a room working on it, and that he put his stamp on it, and then there's all of a sudden 3 people on the beat.
Right.
So that in the hip hop world, that's a lot probably how it is, where I don't know that they would have been contributing to Eminem. I wouldn't imagine lyrically.
I would hope not. But
Maybe
ghostwriting happens.
I was going to say maybe one of those writers is the other is the featured artist who.
Yeah, exactly, and
verse or whatever.
that makes total sense.
Yeah. I mean,
so I'd be curious to know, is that an even split? I tried to Google it, I couldn't find any information, but
who knows?
Probably not. He probably.
In terms of the featured artist or just the writers in general?
The feature. Did he get 50% of that song, or did he get, did they say out of all the words in the song?
And that's where it comes down to the artist.
Whatever
we have
they
no
agreed
idea.
to, yeah.
Fun fact about that, I'll Be Missing You, Biggie Smalls tribute from Puff Daddy. So because Puff Daddy didn't say please to Sting about using that every breath you take sample or whatever, it's rumored that Sting makes $2,000 a day from the sales of that somehow.
Really?
I don't know if it's lawsuit money or how that all equals out. But he earns an estimated $2,000 a day from that song since Puff Daddy didn't say please before using that sample. And so not only did Puff Daddy not write his own line in that song, he's losing $2,000 a day to Sting for stealing his thing. So that's not even a Puff Daddy song anymore. It's a Sting and the 3 other people's song. So you've never ghostwritten, I'm guessing, based off of that conversation.
No, not that I know of.
So ghostly, you don't even remember.
I may or may not have.
Or is he not telling us? Dun, dun, dun.
This ghost never tells his ghost stories.
Oh, that's a good one.
But no, I have not. I've never been approached to do that, and I'm not saying I wouldn't. I guess it's just not common practice. And
a lot of people have $1 million to give you.
No, not really.
So I think the question that we're all really wondering here: are you a part of the Illuminati?
Yes.
I got an invitation on Instagram.
That's the
I feel like that's how they're
rewards
promoting
club
these days.
for Chuck E. Cheese, right?
Yeah, you get like 10 minutes of free gameplay.
Yeah.
No.
Once you join the Illuminati.
Guys, no, I'm talking about like
You get like...
No, the Illuminati, like the...
Okay.
They know the secrets about...
Jake, he's
in that
obviously
case,
not allowed to talk about this.
Yeah. Have to kill you, man.
Wait, or is it the Chuck E. Cheese thing? See, now I'm just confused.
They run in similar circles.
Okay.
They do. They
celebrities.
That's
presidents.
Chuck E. Cheese, the back room with the fake band. That's where most of the meetings happen, actually.
Okay, that's terrifying. By the way, those animatronics at every Chuck E. Cheese, that'll give you nightmares. I don't care how old you are.
So I worked at Chuck E. Cheese for 2 years
Sorry.
when I was
Sorry
16.
about that.
17.
You still have bad dreams?
So I got to be Chucky once. This is a spoiler for any young children listening to this. Parents, turn it off.
I have not taken my daughter to Chuck E. Cheese yet.
So it's just a costume, not a giant rat. But being 6'5", the costume I wear, the furry pants jumpsuit you put on, came to about mid calf for me, and then the big fuzzy feet that you put on over your shoes came to regular shoe levels. So there was it's starting from the top, Chucky, white skinny legs.
It's Chucky knees.
Yeah, it's Chucky knees. Welcome to Chucky knees. And so that was probably really horrifying for a lot of little kids wondering why Chucky was wearing white pull-up socks halfway mid-leg. So I want to talk about some, that was ghostwriting. I want to talk about some co-writers really quickly, and then I have some more questions for Seth. So ghostwriting is not the same as co-writing. Co-writers do get a split, but so every artist, we've talked about this before on the podcast, they're not writing their own songs. And it's a big disappointment when your favorite Britney Spears song was written by Kesha. You're like, didn't know that was a thing. And how cool would it be to be Kesha and writing a song for Britney Spears? Because obviously there's a lot of influence there. Similar genres same genre, similar line of song. But yeah, so Kesha's the woman behind the words to Britney Spears' single "Till the World Ends." So
really?
Can you imagine writing for one of your idols? So Elton John wrote the music for a lot of his songs, but Bernie Taupin actually was the force behind most of his lyrics, like 1972's Rocket Man, or 1970's Your Song, or Crocodile Rock from 1973. None of those Elton wrote. Even Elvis, let's go back even further. So Elvis Presley, he could take care of the hip gyrating and the smooth vocals, but songwriters like Jerry Lieber and Mike Stoller actually covered the swoon-inducing lyrics of tracks like Jailhouse Rock and Hound Dog.
Well, I mean, Dr. Dre...
nothing, you idiot.
Dr. Dre's dead. He's locked in my basement. According to Snoop Dogg, he and Dr. Dre, quote, couldn't come up with nothing as dope as Jay-Z when it came to writing the 1999 single Still
DRE.
DRE.
So the song is called Still DRE and Dr. Dre didn't write it.
It's ironic. Jay-Z did.
Yeah, and then there's just tons. Like you said, Max Martin's writing all those things for Katy Perry and I guess everybody under the sun, actually. But so your favorite songs, look them up, see who's writing them. I have some questions, though. You have any questions?
I do. First question I want to ask is Truth Bomb. Blow our minds. What's the thing for you that was like, I had no idea whenever you got into this, or something that you would want to tell someone else who's not a songwriter? Just the...
It's like songwriting related.
Something that not what you thought it would be like.
I mean, it could be loosely songwriting related.
I think songwriting related, I'd say a couple things. First thing, songwriting related, that it really is formulaic. There is a formula to commercial hit songs.
So there is no mystery. There's not some sort of magical inspiration that strikes suddenly and you come up with this fresh new idea that no one has ever had before. But I mean, at some point, somebody has to move the needle.
Yeah.
At some point, the formula has to change somewhat.
The lane wideners, like you're talking about.
It's 90% formula. You've got to start there, and 10% you. Like that's the formula.
So it's just a very slow progression.
It's like steering a cruise ship, basically.
Yeah.
So that was over the course of my 10, 12 years doing this full time, probably been the biggest thing.
When you say formula, do you mean specifically like the arrangement, verse, chorus, or do you mean like the types of words you use?
All of
or
that.
Rhyming scheme?
All of that. Like
all a formula.
Learning how to analyze a hit song from genre to genre, you'll notice different patterns and trends, and they change over time. But things like BPM, things like rhyme scheme or lack thereof, things like melody, things like lyric concept or content, or lack thereof. You know, it's all of these different things, and learning how to analyze those, and you really start to see, holy cow, these things are like all the same, you know, in some ways.
Yeah.
That's the amazing thing about songs, though, is because how crazy is it that we hear them and we still think, holy crap, like that is blowing my mind right now, even though it might not be that different from the thing that we heard 5 years ago.
Right.
Because you mentioned earlier familiarity. That's probably thing number 2 is, so man, I just came up with this on the spot, the 2 F's, the formula and the familiarity. Like those things have been mind blowing to me. And it's so important to have familiarity for a song to be a hit. So I would even imagine with Camptown Races, Mr. Foster, that it was probably familiar to some nursery rhyme at the time, or to like a pub drinking song or something. You take Amazing Grace or any of the old hymns, they're familiar to pub drinking songs. They took the melodies from pub drinking songs, so there's familiarity already there, put Christian lyrics to them.
Drinking in the church.
Exactly. So I think those 2 things really for me.
What you're saying is originally it was, you got an amazing face.
And there's a guy in the corner going, write that down. Amazing. What rhymes with grace? This is for Jesus now. Yeah.
That's the reality. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think a lot of people probably hear that and they're like, oh, that's disappointing. Like,
yeah.
But for people trying to be commercial songwriters, you're kidding yourself if you believe the opposite is true.
Yeah.
It's just not.
So there's influence and there's familiarity.
Yeah.
But then you get too close to that line, like straight up ripping them off.
Yeah.
And that's where the whole Uptown Funk thing came into play. And I mean, some of those lawsuits, some of them are kind of crazy, but some of them you listen to, like, I totally hear that. And then my wife will listen to it and like, I don't really hear it. I'm like, well, you're listening to it a different way than I am. As a producer and a songwriter, I'm hearing that percussion loop in the background, and I'm hearing they have a crowd noise, whether it's going hey or going woo. They're like, okay, we need this cowbell track. We need a crowd noise. We need this guitar that's panned hard right over there doing some weird abstract lick. I'm like, and this song has all that same stuff. But like, where's that too close line where like, boom, lawsuit, boom, you're just finding influence. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and there's a songwriter in the country world, will not name names, but he has about 8 lawsuits at this point. So some people are more prone to it than others. I've thankfully never had one. And me and most 99% of the people I work with are very conscious of that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's a balance of how many notes exist.
Right.
You know, I mean, 12, right?
12, yeah.
In a scale.
12 notes.
12 chords, right?
12, yeah.
Like, I mean, and really, how many combinations can you come up with them? You know, if I've written 900 songs, how many songs have been written? You just can't stress out over it. And, you know, if I have actually had this happen before, and fine to admit it, but I've accidentally written the same melody on 2 songs.
I was about to ask you that. Have you ever written the same song twice?
I have, and they were both for 2 very well-known, like I would call A-list artists.
Have you ever written a song and then realized, oh, that's Uptown Funk? Like, that must have just been in your head from like 2 years ago. Like, this is a cool melody.
So there's a lot of
there.
subconscious. I've had other people point stuff out. Yeah, that's like, man, you should probably change that. And I'm the first person to want to change it.
Right,
I
like,
don't
we
want
don't need that.
No.
Yeah.
I wrote a song I'll never forget. We were actually just working with Cooper, John Cooper.
Yeah.
And so I had written a music bed, couple of lyrics, sent it over to our singer, and he kind of finished out the track, who then sent it to John, and John adjusted a couple of things that just made it awesome, and we were all stoked.
Yeah.
Had this super rad track, and about 3 p.m. the day after all this beautiful inspiration happened with this song, I get a phone call from one of the other guys in the band who says, so I want you to listen to this Breaking Benjamin song. And I ripped off the song almost note for note and had no idea. It was completely sublime or subconscious. You know, at the time I was intentionally trying to avoid listening to certain things so that I wouldn't rip them off. But maybe if I had listened to it recently, I would have known immediately that that's what that was from, and that it wasn't actually an original song track that I'd come up with.
Yeah, it's a balance of having influences, but also not being too influenced.
You know, quite interesting enough, the last Skillet record that came out, I'm fairly certain John recycled the lyrics that he had used for that song, which never saw the light of day. But there's a song that almost is perfectly word for word which was super cool line.
Yeah, and people have their tendencies too. It's like, I mean, as a musician or guitar player, like I'm gonna probably have my norms that I gravitate to, which is why I think it's important to write on like different instruments and in different settings, and you know, just to break your mind out of it, you know.
Now I happen to know you are full of a lot of songwriting wisdom. You know, whether it's I quote you a lot with artists that I work with, especially you know, younger or newer artists, whether I'm producing or songwriting with them. One of my favorite ones is actually something I saw the first time I visited your studio up by the sink that said "Dare to Suck," and how really I think as it comes to songwriting and especially anybody who wants to be a songwriter, that's probably their biggest fear, and the number one reason why people don't write songs is because they're too afraid of sucking, and they're too afraid that, you know, they might spend 5 years working on one song.
Yeah.
And that's, you have to be able to say, it's okay if I suck at this. It might just be bad.
And just hang on to that in co-writing sessions. Don't be afraid to offer your opinion to those who have been around in the industry longer than you writing songs. So if Jake and I were to write with you, we might be hesitant to like offer our line because we're afraid of rejection. But I just heard a guy in the studio a couple weeks ago tell me he's Scotty Wilbanks. You know Scotty? Third Day?
Yeah.
He said songwriting's a lot like two beautiful women, a blonde and a brunette. They're both beautiful, but different ways. So it's like, throw your lines out. Both lines might work for the song right there, but you can't get all butthurt if they choose some other line to fit in that. Like, he's like, nah, I think this one fits better for the song. They're both great lines.
Yeah.
You just have to pick the brunette over the blonde or vice versa or whatever it is. They're both great creations. So you can't be scared to suck. You can't be scared to throw out your idea because it's probably a great idea. And in a lot of cases, it might suck. But take that risk because that line might change the course of the song too. With the veteran in the room going, whoa, yes, let's go that direction. Let's chase that rabbit. And then you pat yourself on the back, but don't show it outside. And and then you get Chipotle after it.
Yeah, exactly. That's always our mantra is dare to suck. And even that I stole from somebody else. Like I have enough, hopefully, humility to recognize that I really don't have that many original thoughts, including that one.
There's nothing new under the sun.
No,
right?
there's nothing new. So for me, it's more about the hang. Like, it's not about my idea being the one that, there's a lot, and there's different personalities of co-writers too. There's writers that I'll write with who are very adamant on it's their way or the highway, and that's cool if you like their thing that they do,
It's cool if you want to write number 4 song instead of number 1. That's
exactly.
Fine. Whatever,
It's
man.
totally cool. If you like stuff that sucks, I mean,
If that's your thing,
that's
Just
your
a good
thing.
way to sell.
Keep
to
doing
not
it.
Sell records. Yeah.
Yeah. But dare to suck really is something that we try to embody every day. So it doesn't matter if you've never written a song before. It doesn't matter if you're on a completely different plane than I am culturally or successful. It just doesn't matter, because I really do believe that everybody has the potential to create greatness, but it's very subjective, because then there's greatness, there's art, and then there's commerce too. It's a whole gray area. So I always just try to take the stress out of the room, take the stress out of a situation. Sometimes that can just be me, myself saying, hey, this isn't the line. It probably sucks, but fill in the blank. Like stuff like that,
Seth Mosley, you have built an empire. You have you have the knowledge, you have the know-how, you have the track record. Obviously, all the millions of awards and trophies and plaques and gold records out there on the walls. And this ridiculous studio we're sitting in, you have a wealth of information, and I don't know if you've written a book, but you should. But I do know that you are about to share some wisdom, and there's ways for you, the listener, to partake in this wisdom and just suck it all up, which I'm excited to actually sit in on. And Jake, I know you were talking about it before we started this podcast on how excited you are about this. But Seth, tell us about what you are about to release on a global level. What's about to happen?
Yeah, so I thought about it, and the book thing, literally, I have thought about that. And I talked to a mentor of mine, and he was like, man, you should just put everything you know into like a course. Well, the first thing was a podcast. Like, okay, you should start a podcast, and then after you figure out your thing and blah, 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 you should do a course. And so when I sat down to think about doing one on songwriting, I'm like, this is gonna be easy. Like, I do this in my sleep. I can do it in 3 days. I'll bang it out in a weekend. I'll just set up my computer and blah, blah, blah. I sat down to do that, and a year and a half later, here we are with the finished product.
It's a long weekend.
It's a very long weekend. But it's a course, and it's called the Song Chasers course. And I'm of course biased by saying this, but it really is the most comprehensive course out there on commercial songwriting.
And there are a couple out there. You can Google it. There's some out there online, and I've
some
looked at a couple
ones.
of them. Yeah, there are, but some of them don't tell the whole story, or sugarcoat it, or say just what they want to make a few bucks.
Yeah.
Right. There seems to be this sort of like proprietary secrecy. It's like a company saying, "Oh, we'll tell you everything that's in our ingredients."
playbook, yeah.
And then you look, and it's like proprietary blend.
Exactly.
It's like there's always kind of
Right. They're
that
holding
sort of
something
thing.
back.
But tell us about your course, because I happen to know, and for those of you that don't know Seth, he's a very humble man, and he doesn't necessarily have to be, because he could kind of carry himself as more of a look at me, I'm awesome, and he doesn't. And I think that kind of shows through in his teaching materials. So what kind of things, if you are wanting to get into music, or if you've been in it for 20 years and you're wanting to learn how to do it better,
people can get something out of it no matter where they're at, but there's a lot of really advanced stuff in it.
So maybe not just for beginners.
Not only. So I literally think that if you are just starting out and you've never done anything before, there's stuff to learn. But I also think that there's enough in there that a lot of it's going to probably go over their head until they actually put it into practice. So that a veteran can get a lot out of it as well too. Because I know that because I got a ton out of it. And my songs, even as a result of doing all this research, and like it's actually given me a good framework to think about songwriting in the process. a little bit de-stressing to have that framework. So you're not just walking into a blank room with empty space, a blank page. That's the most intimidating thing for most people. It's actually a framework to think about. Okay, well, where do I start? Here's 5-10 ways you can start. Okay, where do I go once I've got the start? What are some things I need the melody to be doing? What are some things that the lyric needs to be doing to elicit a response from the listener, which is really all of our goal at the end of the day. And then after that, what do I do with it? So that's sort of what we tried to distill, and that's why it took about a year and a half to teach. And that's how I know why, even if you've been in the industry for 10, 20, 30 years, you'll still get something out of it, because most people don't think about this stuff.
You're making me mad because you're going to be giving away the formula, essentially, that's keeping us employed.
I am. And I always share that. I have an abundance mentality. I didn't always grow up that way. I'm from a small town, and nothing against small towns, but it's just, there's a lot of sort of stuck in your ways sort of thinking. And for me, the culture that I'm trying to create here with Full Circle Music and through things like the Song Chasers course is a give it all away mentality. Funny enough, the first song I met when I tracked drums with you was called Give It Away.
Huh.
Fun fact. Just thought of that.
That's funny.
But it was actually a Christmas song.
It just came full circle.
It did, yeah. So, and that's really the whole thing. Like, whether it's a relationship, like if you were to say to me, hey, I really want to get into country and I do this, these are my skill sets. And if I know you're good at it, I'm totally fine to vouch for you and say, yes, you should meet this person or that person. I'm not going to hoard relationships, because I know after doing this long enough, if you're good and if you're a great person to work with, there's enough work to go around for everybody.
Right. And that's a problem that some towns have, some music circles have, is like they find their team or their network and they hold those aces up their sleeve.
They do. And it's not the way that it's not the way that I believe doing business. It's really just me as a believer,
right?
As a Christian. I think it's a kingdom mentality of like, ultimately, I know how much I had to do with my first successes, and there's nothing that I could have ever done to have planned my first label project being the band that I got as my first CD when I was a kid.
Man,
like, you can't. How do you plan that stuff? You don't.
It's
plan
interesting,
that stuff.
isn't it?
So, much like Malcolm Gladwell Outliers, I don't know how familiar you guys are with that or listeners, but there's just so little that you have to do with, like, the fact that we were born in America. First of all, did I pick that? No.
Right.
The fact that I was born into a family that could afford to pay electricity so that I could plug my piano in there, like, I had nothing to do with that. So I just think it's the kingdom way of operating,
Sure.
Well, and something that I think from the outside looking in, for me, and seeing you in particular, and why I'm incredibly excited for people to be able to get this course, which actually you'll be offering to our listeners a day early at a significant, like half price, right?
Yeah, half price.
What?
And then again, and then for 3 more days after that, at half price before it goes up to full price. And I mean, half price is the difference. It's huge. But the reason why I'm very excited about you, maybe above some of these other songwriters and course teachers, is that you have the successes under your belt. You've learned, you've gone through the trial and error to be able to pass that wisdom on to someone else and say, this is what you do. This is what you shouldn't do. And this is what you should do. Not because you know better, but because you did it. You did this, and then you did this.
And I'm doing it. I'm like, when we sat down to film this thing, and if the research I did doesn't line up with what I did the same morning, then I wouldn't teach it.
Right. Well, and you're still doing it. It's not like you did it 40 years ago and then you've been retired for a while and you decided, I should put out a course to.
Most of the
help pay
material
my
out
next
there
10 years of
is
retirement.
even from the top songwriting teacher out there, who I won't name names, but is a fantastic songwriting teacher. And I've learned so much from his teaching. He's never written a hit song.
Right.
Probably the number one, probably world-renowned songwriting teacher. He's never written a hit song. I Googled that. I was like,
I can think of a really well-known tutorial course for recording and stuff, again, with credits that no one would know.
Nobody's ever heard of it.
But he's giving good advice on most levels and scales to people who know less than him, which are learning a lot from him.
Yeah. And the other category of people who typically enter into this kind of space of teaching and teaching courses and things like that are people that had success, but like you said, maybe 20 years ago, maybe in the 90s.
Right. Not like the now what situation.
So they can truly say, hey, I've written hit songs for X, Y, and Z, but they haven't done it in 20 years.
Right.
And things change in the songwriting industry, in the music industry.
Well, even
in 5 years.
The Music Modernization Act just passed in September, and that's one of the biggest pieces of legislation for songwriters, producers, and engineers.
In a century.
Yeah.
In a nutshell, what is that for
100
people
years.
who have no idea what we're talking about? Just like 2-second version.
Well, Music Modernization Act, the nutshell is that it updates legislation to match where we're at in the current music industry.
Yeah.
So to compensate for things like Spotify,
like streaming,
iTunes.
things that did not exist.
In the 70s when the law originally came through or something, 76? Is that was something, the standards were from like that point?
Well, they were from, post, I feel like World War II era or something.
Jeez.
Like, I mean, it's, and don't quote me on that. David Israelite is a good guy to go to if you want all that information, or Ross Golan or any of these other guys. But what's really exciting is that it's the first forward progression that names not just songwriters, but producers and engineers.
Amen.
And musicians who normally would not be participating in any back-end income. It was all the artist or the label or the publisher or whoever, but now it's naming producers, engineers, musicians, people that should be getting credit on these things.
We're often, all three of us in the room doing those three jobs, often or more, are behind the scenes. We're behind the curtains. And sometimes it's tough to see a song that you were such a huge part in the instrumentation of, literally and figuratively, and see it do well. And the artists are like, look at me. Yeah, we did that. And we're like, oh, remember us? That actually all those ideas were ours? Or, you got to stay humble. But it hurts sometimes to be in the shower in the morning and like, oh man, why do I do this?
Crying
and weeping, and your wife's just petting your head.
Yeah, if you're braiding your arm hair and crying and or armpit hair, I mean, it's a hard business. So I'm just really, really thankful. Specifically, shout out to NSAI and Bart Herbison here in Nashville, and Lee Thomas Miller, Ben Glover, all the people that have been lobbying on our behalf,
pushing hard,
because it has been a battle. We've had to fight. Sirius XM has been, a big hill to climb. CSAC at one point, their parent company Blackstone tried to block it,
and that's a hard pill to swallow when the company that's representing you. We're all on. You're on CSAC.
I'm CSAC, and we went in and we met with them, and they had a very long list of writers that were going to leave. Their big,
including their biggest writer.
Yeah. We're blacklisting them. Same to Sirius XM. It's political suicide within an industry. So I don't understand how they have done that. But fortunately, the music army, as we've been calling it, has risen, and people have listened for the first time in a century. And
for the record, CSAC did release a statement saying, "Hey, no, we're siding with our artists."
They did. They came back around. I don't know where Sirius XM stands on it. A lot of it is, the parent companies, to be honest.
Right.
I have great friends at Sirius XM. I have great friends at CSAC that largely, aren't able to influence that decision, other than, hey, 1,000 people here just sent us a petition saying they're going to leave if so, and they were doing that.
And the parent businesses, which are businesses, they're companies to make money, are saying, "Oh crap, we're going to lose our business because their bread and butter is going to leave."
Yeah, exactly. And Harry Fox Agency, that was the big, for a lot of people that don't know what that is, Harry Fox Agency is the big administration or collection agency that keeps track of all these little 0.0000001 cent streams that are happening billions of times a day.
Yeah.
And the MMA is designed to create essentially a competitor to that that's a little more fair.
That's great.
I'm all over it.
That's great. Competition is absolutely wonderful.
Yes.
Dude, I can't believe that you're selling out the format. That's crazy. But obviously, tons of things that I'm going to learn, and I am in this industry and have been in this industry for 20 years.
I think it's important to always be learning. Always be
If-
bettering yourself. Yeah.
If you're in the room as the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. Is that what they
Right.
say?
Yeah.
That's why we brought Seth in here so he can learn from us.
Hey, I learned a lot this morning, man. This was awesome.
Man, we're just humbled and very, very blessed to have you on this podcast with us today. So, okay, another formality, since I'm like the formality guy. When we do this course with you, are we flying to Nashville to do this, or is this an online course or videos? What's this look like?
Yeah,
to me?
it's online. That's a great question, Robert. It's online, so people can take it at their own pace. If they want to watch the lyric section 10 times to make sure they got it, they can do that.
Yeah.
So once people have it, they have just unlimited lifetime access to it in a members only portal, basically.
That's awesome.
Cool. So it's not like you watch it once and you have to pay for again if you want to see it again.
No, it's unlimited lifetime access.
And is this a combination of video and reading material? Is it video only, reading only?
Yes, primarily video, but we also include some downloadable assets as well, like Logic templates or Pro Tools templates and
That's
GarageBand
genius.
things. Because a lot of it, a lot of people out there listening, like maybe don't consider themselves songwriters, but what defines a songwriter, right? A lot of it's music.
Right, yeah.
So if you can create a piece of music, you're a songwriter.
Well, and your templates, your ability to create templates is part of the reason. I mean, that's part of your fame.
Yeah.
That's part of why you now have all of these awards and you have a nice, beautiful home and studio and all of this. As simple as it sounds, it's figuring out a lot of those things that allowed you to move past people that were kind of at your level and kind of continue to grow and grow and grow and work with bigger and bigger artists. And that is the type of thing that you're going to be letting people in on in this course.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's there. So you get some starting points. There is some text that accompanies. There's a lot of links and exercises for people to practice, because we didn't want it to just be a long lecture style sitting and it goes in one ear and out the other. It's actually has a lot of exercises for people to put into practice so they can secure the information and actually learn how it applies.
I imagine this is going to be something revolutionary, like just for everybody out there, myself included, just to open our eyes to what's really going on behind closed doors at Full Circle with Seth Mosley. Like, holy crap. So we actually found out today that you're doing something even more special for us, that you're going to give us a URL to send our listeners to get it for more than half off, which is ridiculous already, and open to Turned Up listeners a complete day before everybody else in the world.
Yeah,
that's a huge honor for us. What do you want to make that? Let's make a URL right now.
So we're here with Seth. So why not just turneduppodcast.com/Seth?
Done. turneduppodcast.com/Seth. And we'll just redirect it straight over to your website, which will be closed to the public except for our Turned Up listeners.
That will be the only link for the first day that it's out. So the day this podcast is coming out, October 8th, 2018.
In the year of our Lord.
It's a Monday. You have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and by the end of the day, Thursday, which is
the 11th, October 11th.
The 11th, to get a deal that will only be available for those 4 days for Turned Up listeners. A deal that will never come up again. The best price on this course that
Ever.
you will get. And we're talking over half off. So if you missed it, that's okay. If you're listening to this on Friday, and yesterday was Thursday, the 11th.
Why'd you wait so long to listen to our podcast?
Yeah.
That'll teach you a lesson.
Seriously.
That's a good question.
So you missed out, and from now on, if you know, but that's okay. Still go to turneduppodcast.com/Seth.
See what we got in store for you.
And we're still, Full Circle Music, Seth Mosley, he has been gracious enough to give Turned Up listeners an exclusive offer through that link. So check it out. And this course, I'm serious. I have taken courses. I've looked into taking courses for different things, whether it's songwriting, production, whatever it is. And I get so frustrated when you get to that part where you start realizing, oh, they left out some important ingredients of this pie here.
They literally tell you all the little secrets they're going to tell you in the preview for it.
Right. And then
I learned absolutely nothing.
And then you see the words proprietary ingredients.
Yeah.
You're like, but Kentucky Fried Chicken, tell me what 11 herbs and spices are in your chicken because I want to make it at home. I love your chicken. They're not going to tell you, but Seth Mosley is going to tell you exactly what those 11 herbs and spices are and his songwriting that has allowed him to be so successful and be able to climb the ladder per se, but more importantly, be able to write songs that the world is hearing. He's able to make a living doing this. He's able to have, whether it's financial freedom or just get to do what he loves for a living. I know so many of you personally, as well as some that I have not met, but I know that there are so many people out there that want to know how to do this. It's their dream and they just don't quite know how to break into it. And this is the course that's going to let you know. And that's part of the reason why I myself personally am very excited to go through this course.
Same. And I think we're gonna sit next to each other and hold hands while we watch this and take notes.
Sip hot cocoa.
Can I watch a live stream of you doing that?
So we will be live streaming at turneduppodcast.com. no. And
fullcircle.com//
lap sitting. No, absolutely not.
Don't go there.
Only in person.
Don't go there.
Man, no, yeah, it's gonna be huge. Like I had no idea it's gonna be this big, but it's gonna be big.
Yeah, it's been a labor of love. I will say that that's every bit of that is true. It's teaching songwriting is so incredibly hard. Yeah. And that's why I give hats off and props to everybody else who, even though they may not have hits and credits, the fact that they're able to teach these right brain concepts so clearly, more power to them.
Yeah, man.
But we've done all the work. We've done all the research. We've combed back through our hundreds and hundreds of songs and tons of other hit songs that are on the radio. And we teach people how to analyze what's the recipe that goes into them.
Man, the herbs and spices. Dude, well, Seth, thank you a million times over. First of all, for the hookup on that deal, and for second of all, more importantly, for being here today and letting us pick your brain for a minute.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me. I love your show. Seriously, not just saying that.
Whatever.
It's one of my favorite podcasts that I listen to.
Dude.
And I encourage your listeners to go back through the archives and listen to all of them. They're all really good.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, man, thanks.
That's a huge honor. You actually have a podcast yourself called Made It in Music, and it's by far one of my favorite podcasts. You have an ability to pull information and a certain sort of, whenever you said it earlier that you like to bring an ease to the room when you're songwriting. I love the interviews that you're able to get with the artists, songwriters, music professionals that you talk to and work with as well.
Yeah, there's one with John Cooper, I think, that I like.
That was the very first one.
Yeah.
Which is funny because I've known John.
That was the first one?
That was the first one.
I think first one of our new season.
Okay, so I might have listened out of order because that wasn't the first one I heard.
Before that, it was the Full Circle Music podcast.
We rebranded at the beginning of 2018, as the Made It in Music podcast. We were called the Full Circle Music Show before, and we did 100 episodes under that name, and John Cooper was episode 101.
You just don't stop. Like
I get too bored. I got to do stuff. But to your point, I consider myself a lifelong learner. And so for me, the podcast is a selfish thing. I love it for myself. And the fact that I get to share it with the world is just like icing on the cake. So like that John episode, I learned so much just by like stuff I would have never known about him. Like I've worked with him on a couple records now and written dozens of songs with him, but ended up learning something that I had no idea.
Go back and listen to that episode if you haven't heard it before.
You'll be hooked on that podcast.
It's awesome. Oh yeah.
It's what I was going to say was, I've known him for a while, just having toured with him and a lot of, lots of conversations, whether brief or long or just in passing, either way, I've seen him with his family. I've seen him with his kids. I've seen him on stage. I've seen him writing songs or whatever it is. And hearing the things that he says in that episode, was blowing my mind. Thinking you think you know somebody until they get on the Made It in Music podcast.
And it's just much like what y'all are doing. I think it's pulling back the curtain, but it's giving people tangible tools and resources to make it in music. Hence the name, Made It in Music.
So what you're saying is it's similar to our podcast, just better because
higher profile clientele and
walks away with actual information instead of
not useless bits from Jeopardy that they'll never use.
Hey, it's like Blonde and Brunette.
I see you're drinking tea over there. I actually had a glass of tea last night out of my Turned Up podcast mug,
That's right.
which is not as sexy as that
this one's like
full
3D.
circle. I know.
And it's the yerba mate. You can get 10% off at 10% turneduppodcast.com/ right? That's not where you were going with that?
That wasn't where I was going with that. But now that
I listen to a lot of podcasts that cleverly weave that stuff in. So
right where it
It's
turns
not
into
really
an
that
ad all of a
clever.
sudden.
always
It's
an
not really
ad.
that clever. Although we will say
It was a segue though.
it was a
Was a
segue. We want to thank our sponsors through our patrons,
Our patrons, yeah.
our listeners, and
Would you believe we actually have people who listen to us, first of all? And second of all, some of those people want to send us money to help us continue talking to them, which is very weird to us.
I didn't know that was an option. I should become one of those people.
You can pay us to talk to you if you want.
I love it.
We'll talk to you for free. But yeah, so we have different stages of like, if you want to just donate to help us keep Turned Up Podcast in your ear holes, we'll send you stickers and mugs and all sorts of fun things. You get access to a secret private Facebook page where we kind of put some of our notes up there and some of our uncut podcasts where we're like, people don't want to hear that. We cut it out. Some people want to hear that. So we kind of swallow our pride and put it out there for some people who want to be our patrons. But how can you find out more about this?
it's very easy.
Tell me.
Turneduppodcast.com. When you click, it'll take you to our page that'll show all of our episodes.
You'll see our ugly mugs there. Not on the mugs you drink out of, but our faces.
Those are ugly too.
Yeah, all the things that we have are ugly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So if you look, there'll be an ugly link in the, I believe it's on the right side of the page, but it says
Right.
become a patron, and it will take you and show you just a list. So you can give anywhere from $5 a month all the way up to I think $50 or $100 a month if you want.
if you want to give more than that, shoot us an email. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, we have no problem figuring out how to take your money. But for real, thank you so much to those of you that make that possible, that are already giving and donating to our podcast. And if you want to do that, we can let you in. And we're super grateful for you, Seth, for coming and letting us crash your place, chatting with us and letting us yap your ear off and ask you all these questions and really kind of pry into the world of songwriting and now hopefully not you, Seth, but you listening, what all goes into those songs that you're listening to, and it's not quite as simple as maybe those artists might make it sound.
It might not even be the artist that you're hearing, as we spoke of.
That's true.
But dude, Seth, sorry for your loss of the Grammy that's missing. I don't have a clue where it went. Don't look in my backpack.
I'll send you a bill.
Oh, you got it for free, so not worried about it.
It's an imaginary bill. It's like I was going to charge him Monopoly money.
I don't even have that. I think my son took all of that.
He ate it.
Yeah, he does things like that, which is weird.
And on that note,
We have to thank a couple more people. We have to thank you, the listener, for spending the last however amount of time with us listening to this diaper stories and songwriting stories and stories from the crypt. But we also have to thank Real Sound Media for letting us have a platform to push this podcast through your earbuds / car speakers / whatever smart device you're listening to in your house with.
Absolutely. Thank you, Real Sound, for putting this together. Thank you, Robert, for being so beautiful and not being dead as old as you are. I appreciate you still being here.
Still kicking.
And of course, thank you, Seth. Thank you, Full Circle Music, for the facility
That's
and
ridiculous. That's
lending
awesome.
us your time, expertise, and the beautiful Seth Mosley.
Yeah.
Honored to be here. Thank you for, I was going to say to be here. I guess I'd be here anyway.
Thank you for coming to my place.
Thank you for coming. This is what I should say.
Man, if you like this podcast, or even if you don't like this podcast, we'd love for you to give us a 5-star review.
Give us an earful, as long as
us
it has
hear
5 stars.
Tell us your favorite joke or your least favorite song that's ever been written by Seth Mosley. And we'll
I
make
would
sure
love
that
to
he
hear
gets that message. And you can do that at turneduppodcast.com. You can do it at on Apple Music or Spotify or wherever you want to rate us. We appreciate that.
iTunes podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and then
CastBox, all the things.
And then, of course, Facebook.com/
Turned Up Podcast. Same with Twitter. It's at Turned Up Podcast. Or
Instagram.
Always, and Instagram. Always on the interwebs at www.
turneduppodcast.com. Don't forget about that
just add a /Seth at the end of that and get in while the getting's good, because
Song
it's
Chasers
only
course.
literally today through Thursday, October 8th through October 11th, and then things change around a little bit, but I highly recommend it. This guy knows his stuff and is legit the real deal.
Well, thank you guys. Appreciate it.
I think that's all from Nashville, Tennessee. This is Turned Up Podcast signing out.
Peace. As we mentioned, huge thank you and shout out to our patrons who made this episode possible. Michael J83, Davin C. Casey, Laura Ann, Elise 7, Samantha Seeger, Natalie B, J. Walter 1, and Josiah 820. You guys rock. We love you. We'll be back next week.